Please turn in your Bibles to Luke chapter 15. This is the last message in the series Lost and Found. And we have taken 5 messages to look at this great chapter in the Bible that's called the Gospel Within the Gospel. And we are in the last half of the last parable that Jesus told. If you have not been with us, I want to catch you up to speed. In this parable, Jesus tells of a man who had 2 sons, and the younger said to his dad, "Give me what is coming to me," and his father did it. He took all that his father had given to him, and he went to a far country where he spent it all, and once he had spent it all, he went to work for a man who had pigs, and he was working with the pigs, and he realized, what am I doing here working with these pigs? He said that I could go home and be with my father, and so he creates this speech. He's going to go back and tell his dad he's sorry. He just wants to be a hired hand with his father, like one of the other servants. And so on his way back, his father is waiting for him, comes to him, hugs him, kisses him, places a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, and they throw a huge party for him because he was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and now he's found. So we come to verse 25, which is after this party has begun. So look with me at verse 25. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." The title of the message today is "So Close and Yet So Far." It was the great scholar Shrek who said, "Ogres are like onions." And what he meant by that is people would see Shrek, and because of his exterior, they would say, "Ooh, big, ugly, stinky ogre." And he said, "They judge me before they even know me." On the outside, if you look at Shrek, you would say, well, that's an ugly ogre who doesn't want anything but to eat people and beat them up. But Shrek would say, I actually want love, I want affection, I want friends, I want a family. We have layers. The idea is if you were to pull back the layer that's on the outside, on the inside, you would find something that's beautiful. Ogres have layers, but people also have layers. You heard growing up, don't judge a book by its cover, which is a good idea. Great advice. Don't judge a book by its cover. So someone who is unimpressive on the outside could be beautiful on the inside. But we also know that the opposite could be true. That someone who is beautiful and impressive on the outside could actually be ugly on the inside. But it's not until you peel back the layers that you see that they are rotten inside. So I want to remind you, why is Jesus even telling these parables? The reason why Jesus is telling these parables, you go back to verse 1 of chapter 15, where it says the tax collectors and the sinners, they were all gathering around him to hear him, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So the whole point Jesus is telling these parables is because they're saying, how could you, Jesus, a holy man of God, eat with sinners? We're supposed to be holy. How could you be partying with sinners? And Jesus says, if you really knew God, the question is, why haven't you joined the party? Because Jesus, as he speaks to these Pharisees, and he gets to this last parable, and he's talking about the elder brother represents them. The elder brother in the story is the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. If you start to peel back the layers, you will start to see that one of the things, if you grew up in church, when you hear the word Pharisee, you automatically think something negative because that's been what you've heard. But if you lived back then, to hear of a Pharisee or a teacher of the law would be somebody very respectable, like your pastor or a minister. They knew a lot about the Bible. They were seemingly people of character. But when Jesus comes on the scene, he peels back the layers to show that these who seemingly on the outside are beautiful are actually rotten inside. I'll give you one example. This is Matthew chapter 23, verse 25 to 28. Jesus talking to the Pharisees and teachers of the law. He says, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside will also be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." This is a scathing rebuke. In fact, if you look at all of chapter 23, he goes in on them for 39 verses. And when you read chapter 23, when you get to the end of it, you say, yeah, I understand why they want to kill him. Because he absolutely lays into them because they're not real. On the inside, they are rotten, full of dead man bones, but on the outside, they look beautiful to everyone else. Well, here's the scary part. Where do you find yourself in this story? Are you the younger brother or the older brother? My hope is today as we look at this passage, God will peel back the layers and you will see yourself as you really are. And this passage has been very, very beneficial to me this week. So the story picks up and there's a party going on, and the son, he comes from the field. There's a party going on and he comes in and he's wondering what's going on. So imagine you're out in the field working, and then you come near the house and you hear, "Celebrate good times, come on." And you hear, "I want to rock with you." And you hear all kinds, and you're like, what is going on? So he calls one of the servants. "Hey, come here. What's happening?" He hears dancing and music. In the Greek, it's a symphony. He hears all this music. What's happening? And you know what he says? "Your brother is home." And what was his reaction? He's angry. Oh, wait. Your brother has been gone, presumed dead or lost, and now he's come back. Lord knows for how long he's been gone or lost, maybe years. He's back, and the Bible says he came back. He says he is safe and sound. The word that he uses there is the Greek word where we get our word for hygiene. It means he came back healthy. There's nothing wrong with him. Everything's great with him. And you're angry? What you get angry about reveals a lot about what you value. why in the world are you angry? Now, before we dissect what he says, I don't know if you at all identify with the older brother. I'm an older brother. And there was a period in my life where I was like, dude, I feel you. Because when my brother was rising and ascending in the ranks of basketball and everything, there was a period where I was jealous. Because we grew up and all we did every single day was play sports. In the backyard, we used to dream about playing sports under the big lights. And I went to preach and he went to play. And I was a little jealous, a little bitter. But then the Lord, he dealt with that. And I said, I love this more. I'd probably be more healthy by the time my career's over. But I was jealous. But then there was a period where Josh was doing so much. And my dad would come in the pulpit and he would talk about his son. He would show pictures of his son. He would have jerseys of his son. Pictures all over the house of him with this person and that person. And I would just walk through the house like, okay. Wish there was a picture of me. And I had this joke that I always say around the house. I would say, Josh was out there doing that. I'm just here laboring in the vineyard. Just out here just working. But there was a period where I felt forgotten. And I felt like I was being compared to him. And I felt like, are you seeing what I'm doing? Do you see how hard I work? Do you see how much time I'm putting in? And there was a difficulty and a bitterness. But I just continued to labor in the vineyard. But the Lord had to deal with me in a myriad of ways. But one of the ways is, I remember my dad got up one Sunday and he just began to talk about how he felt about me. And, shucks. Dang it, what's it going to do this? Yeah, onions. Ogres are like onions. So he talked about me and I was floored by what he said. And in hearing that, I said, what is wrong with you? And growing up, there was never any sense of favoritism. My parents loved all of us equally. There was never even a hint of that. But what the Lord brought me to is the same thing he says to his son. He says, your brother was dead and now he's alive. It's not every day that happens. It's not every day your brother's lost and is found. It's not every day your brother's in the NBA. Amen. It's not every day your brother's playing in the Olympics. Amen. It's not every day he's in a magazine. He said, I'm not ignoring you. I see what you're doing, but let's celebrate what we see him doing. One of the things I was scared about in having two children was, am I going to be able to love one the same as I love the other? Would I be able to, would my love be able to spread? So me and Ma talked about that. She's like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. That's never happened, so I don't know. Let me tell you, my baby was born, something happened where my ability and my capacity to love, God expanded it. And if it's weird to say this, I feel like I love my kids even more than before. I was hugging Noah. I love you, Noah. He said, what's wrong with you, Daddy? You don't talk to me like this. But I identify with the elder brother. But the elder brother is wrong. And I was wrong. Because comparison kills. So this whole time we've been thinking that the younger brother is the one lost. But this is why this is usually the misnamed parable. Because this is not about one son who is lost. This is about two sons that are lost. The younger son is lost and also the older son is lost. And the irony of this scene is unmistakable. The offended insider is himself a resentful outsider. What we're going to see is the one who is seemingly supposed to be on the inside is actually on the outside. So I want to dissect and talk about how this older brother is lost. Number one, I want you to notice the disrespect. Look at verse 28. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. His father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look. What he said to him, look here, you. I don't know about you. If you said that to any of my parents, you would get smacked. We've been thinking that the younger son is the one who's the disrespectful one, right? He comes to the father and says, give me what's coming to me. He commands him. And here, the older brother says, look here, you. The disrespect. He doesn't say father. He doesn't say sir. He doesn't say pops. Nothing. Look here, you. Secondly, though, I want you to notice, he viewed his relationship with his father as slavery. Look what he says. Look, you, all these years, I've been what? Slaving for you. There's no joy in serving you. This is like slavery. You're my slave master. Older brother, you are not a slave. You are a son. You are an heir. You have access to your father. You can sit at the table with your father. You can go into the office with your father. You're not like one of the hired servants. You are an heir. You are a son. And you said this whole time, I've been slaving for you. All these years, think he's keeping count of how long he's been working? All these years, I've been slaving for you. There is no joy in just seeing his father pleased. It's like I'm just doing work for my master. I also want you to notice he sees himself as a law keeper. He says, I never disobeyed your orders. Never disobeyed your orders. Dad, can you remember a time when you asked me to do something and I didn't do it? You can't, can you? You know why? Because it doesn't exist. I've always done what you've asked me to do. In other words, I've been perfect. In other words, look at my righteousness. Isn't that the height of arrogance? I've never done anything wrong. I've always done what is right. Do you see a picture developing how he views his father? He's in the house. We thought, well, he must have been the good son because he ain't out in the far country. But he's at home, and he's just as disrespectful. He views his relationship with his dad like he's a slave, and he thinks that he's a righteous person because he's never disobeyed any of his orders. But here's the question. Why did he slave for him, and why did he seemingly never disobey his orders? And here's the reason. Because his motivation was getting the riches of his father. Look at what he says. I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. Let me get this right. He comes and asks for his part of the estate. You give it to him. He goes out, he squanders it all. He comes back, and then you reinstate him. Remember, he's already gotten rid of 1/3, so all of it was supposed to be mine. Now you give him the position of a son? Dad, he doesn't deserve a fattened calf. Dad, you are treating him the way you're supposed to treat me. And you're treating me the way you're supposed to treat him. You killed the fattened calf for him. Look at all I have been doing for you. What is his motivation? His motivation is the goods of his father. He was not interested in a relationship with his father. He was interested in what the father had. Remember we said that was the same thing about the younger son. That the younger son, he wasn't interested in the father, he was interested in the father's bank account. You say, well, that's not true of the older brother. Yes, it is. The older brother is just not stupid enough to come out and just say it outright. The older brother said, I'll just wait till you die. I'll be the nice, good son following all your orders, and when you're done, I'll get everything. I'll get the land, I'll get the cattle, I'll get all the money. They both wanted the same things, they just wanted it differently. And this is often the motivation for people who call themselves followers of Jesus. They don't want a relationship with God, they only want what God can give to them. And what they try and do is they want to control God, control him through their goodness. If I can be good enough, if I can do all the right things, then God has to bless me. God has to pour out on me. And what happens when they realize that God cannot be controlled, they get angry. When the older son realized all my good works and all of my righteousness is not getting me what I think I deserve, he got angry. And he saw grace and he hated it. He hated grace. People who are moralistic, they hate grace because they say it must be what I do that earns me. And this older son is wrong. And people who follow Jesus for the reason of getting just so that they can have and not have Jesus is wrong. And so this is how people do. I've been reading my Bible. I've been coming to services. I've been not listening to 94.9 or 106. All Christian music. I've been doing all that, but Lord, how'd she get that car? How does she have a baby? How'd they get that house? I've been to all the engine rooms. She ain't been to one. And she got a promotion. God, where's you didn't give me a young goat. He got the fattened calf. He $200 a plate. You don't even take me to Applebee's. The little goat out there just shivering. You didn't give me him. Where? How do you react when things go? How do you react when things go bad in your life? What people do when things go bad in their life, and they say, "See, this is not working. Christianity doesn't work. I got sick. Christianity doesn't work. Check bounced." And here's the reason you think Christianity doesn't work is because you think you can control God through your goodness. Amen. You cannot control God through your goodness. And what we see here is that you can be alienated from God through rebellion or by obedience. This is what Tim Keller said. It is not his sins that create the barrier between him and his Father. It's the pride that he has in his moral record. It's not his wrongdoing, but his righteousness that is keeping him from sharing in the feast of the Father. This is a very shocking message that careful obedience to God's law might serve as a strategy for rebellion against God. People look to what they do as a way of trying to control God, and when they don't get what they want, they get upset and mad. Both sons should have valued their father over his possessions. And they should have rejoiced in just having a relationship with him. There's an apocryphal story, meaning it's not in the Bible. Not sure if it's true. It's probably not true, but it's an interesting story. Jesus was with his disciples, and he asked the disciples, he said, I want you to carry a stone for me. Carry a stone for me. So they all started looking for stones, and Peter said, well, he didn't say what size. So he grabbed the littlest one he could find. and put it in his pocket. So they started going. At one point, they stopped for lunch. They all sat down. And then Jesus waved his hand and turned all of their stones into bread. And of course, Peter has his little one-piece chicken nugget. And he finishes his lunch really fast. And so they get up, and then Jesus said again, I want you to carry a stone for me. Carry a stone for me. And then Peter goes, I got you. I got it. So he finds one of the biggest boulders he can carry. And he puts it on his shoulders and on his back, and he's walking with it, and he's falling behind, but he's carrying this boulder. And evening comes, and Jesus says, come over here to this river. And they get to this river, and he's ready. He's looking at Jesus, and Jesus says, I want you to throw your stone into the river. So they all throw their stones into the river. And then Jesus says, let us go. He said, wait, what? Peter's like, what? And then Jesus turned around and looked at him. He said, who did I ask you to carry the stone for?
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Some people, what they do for God is not really for God. It's for themselves. Why do you do what do you do? What is your motivation for obedience? What is your motivation for work? If I were to ask you, if you're a husband, or if you ask me as a husband, why don't you cheat on your wife? And your answer is, well, it's somewhere in Exodus that we ain't supposed to do that. But you go to your wife and say, you know what, though? If it wasn't in there, I'd be cheating all the time. But it's in there, so I'm going to abide by it. Wives, would you feel honored by that? Well, thank God for the Bible. No. The answer you'd want to hear is, I'm faithful to you because I love you. And I want to please you. And I love only you. I have eyes only for you. If I'm only obeying a law just to obey the law, but my heart is somewhere else, that's not love. And yet some people, when they approach God, the only reason they follow him is because they think that there's something in it for them. And many people don't serve God to please him, rather to please themselves. And there was a gardener who came before a king, and he had this carrot, huge carrot. And he said, King, this carrot I have, this is the best carrot that I've ever grown or ever will grow. And I want to bring this carrot to you as a token of my love and my honor and my respect of you. And the king said, wow, thank you so much. And the gardener was turning to leave. And the king said, wait. In response to what you did, I have a plot of land right over here to the right. And I want to give that to you so you can tend it and cultivate it and you can have everything that's on it. And this gardener, he went his way rejoicing. He was so happy by that. But there was a nobleman who was in the room. And he said, whew, if he could get all that for a carrot, what if I could give something greater? So the next day, this nobleman brings in a black stallion. And he comes before the king and says, oh, great king, this is the greatest horse that I've bred or ever will breed. And I want to give him to you as a sign of my honor and my respect to you. And the king looked, discerned his heart, and he said, thank you so much. He took the horse and then dismissed him. And he was standing there looking perplexed. And the king looked at him and he said, let me explain something to you. That gardener, he was giving me the carrot. But sir, you were giving yourself the horse. Why do you do what you do for God? Are you doing it only because you want something for yourself? Elder brothers, they serve God. They feed the homeless. They clothe those without clothes, not because they want to clothe them, but because they want to clothe themselves. The elder brother is lost. In 5, I want you to notice that he felt superior to his younger brother. Did you notice that? 2 times, the servant says, your brother, and then his dad also says your brother. But you notice what he said to him in verse 30? He said, but when this son of yours, when your kid's acting up, and you say, babe, that's your son. What you're trying to say is, he didn't get that from me. And somewhere along the line, this brother thought that he's different from me. Look at what he was out there doing compared to what I was doing. He's out there with prostitutes. Now, how did he know that? Well, scholars' commentaries, they talk about the fact that, well, Jesus put the truth in his mouth. It could be right. I'm just saying, if you just look at the text, there's no way for him to know that. Maybe because that's what he wanted to do. But he's in the house and he needs to make sure he doesn't do anything to mess up his money. Your son, he's out there with the prostitutes and you killed the fattened calf for him. I'm not like him. I'm not like him. He is your rebellious son and I am the one who is always doing what is right. Did you notice that? He said, this son of yours. But the father corrects him and said, this brother of yours. In other words, this is what happens when you've been in the faith for a long time. You tend to forget that you used to be lost. Amen. And the longer you are in the faith, the harder it is for you to remember that. Because you are not born into the family of God physically. It's a spiritual birth. So all of us at one point were alienated from God. At one point, all of us were rebellious, and at one point, all of us were enemies of God. Listen to what Paul says. He says this in 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 9. Do you not know that the wicked will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor male prostitutes, nor homosexual offenders, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. And then look at what he says next. And that is what some of you were. In other words, in every church you got ex-hustlers, ex-sexually immoral, ex-swindlers, ex-homosexual offenders. Key word, ex. If you say you have been saved and yet there is no change in your life, where people can say there's a difference, you haven't been changed. But he says, this is what some of you were. And how did he do it? But you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. In other words, there is nothing different between you in the church and you, those on the outside. They are your brothers in that we are all born in the sin. And the longer you are in the faith, and the more advanced you get, the more prone you are to compare yourself to other people. It's like we just did the fitness test yesterday, and one of the things we had to do, some people had to do, was run a mile. And if I were to say to all of us in this room, everybody, we're going to go outside and run a mile. No walking, you have to run. Some would die. Literally. But if I said to you, after 3 months, I want you to train every day. Every day, go to the gym. Every day, get your running shoes on and run. And at the end of that 3 months, I said, now run this mile. Some of us would do so much better. We'd have a great time, and we would be just lapping people. But what would happen, what would you think about someone who before was on the ground begging for God to kill them? What would you do if that same person, as somebody else was new, starting, they were on the ground saying, Lord, kill me, I can't do this. And they said, oh, look at this person. They can't even do it. How weak are they? I can run around this thing easy. They forgot where they used to be. Amen. And you would look at that person and say, what kind of person are you? Have you forgotten how long ago you couldn't run a mile? Amen. And it's amazing how long you've been in church and you start to believe, how do they not know that? Everybody knows John 3:16. Everybody knows that, and you just forget that when you've been in it for so long, it's easy for you. It comes like it's just nothing to you. But we start to compare ourselves. Everybody likes to compare themselves to somebody they know they can beat. Going in the gym, talking about, oh, you only got one plate on each side? I be hearing 2 plates on there. You don't say that to the dude who got 5 plates on there. Looking like the Hulk, you be quiet like, oh, bless you, sir. Like, you ain't. But everybody want to compare themselves to someone they know they can beat. But the truth of the matter is that God has saved us all, and there's nothing different about you than the person who is right now on the street. Literally nothing. Just because I was born into a Christian family doesn't mean that God didn't have to still find me and rescue me. It might even be harder. Pastors' kids are horrible people sometimes. Trust me, I know something. Now, when it said that the son got angry, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Jonah. Remember that? Yeah. He said, Jonah, I want you to go preach to the Ninevites. He said, no. I know them. I know what they do to people. I ain't going over there. So he ran. He went the opposite direction, got on a boat. God sent a storm. They threw him off. God created a fish. The fish swallowed him. He inside the fish like, this was a mistake. I should have listened to the Lord. He repented of his sins. He had the fish spit him out. And then Jonah goes to Nineveh and he starts to preach. And as he's preaching, after he's done, guess what happens? People repent. Turn to God. And what was Jonah's reaction? Mad. What? Why are you upset about people getting saved? And he said, that's why I didn't want to come in the first place. Because I knew that's how you is. When you do that, when you preach, people come to you and you will forgive them. So he got up on a hill and he started looking down and said, I know God's going to do something. He's going to send down fire. He's going to do something like that. So he's sitting there. The sun is on him. He's hot. And he wants to die. So God creates this vine to grow over him. And it shades him. And he goes, yes. Goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning. God then creates a worm to eat the vine. Now he's mad again. And God says, do you have any right to be angry? He said, yes, I do. I'm so angry I could die. That's literally what he said. How angry do you got to be to die from it? Well, how did he die? He got so mad he just died. And he said, how is it? Did you cause this vine to grow? No. You didn't tend it. You didn't water it. You didn't do anything. It just grew. And you care more about a vine than people. And I knit these people together in their mother's womb. Should I not be concerned about that great city? Lord, they're sinners. They're evil. They're wicked. Excuse me, Jonah, you still have some fish stomach on your face. How quickly do we forget? You still got the smell of fish on you, and you talk about, what do they deserve grace for? This is common, and it's in the Bible for a reason. Listen, if you've been in the church for a long time, please beware of this. Because along the way, you just really start to believe, I'm responsible for my righteousness. You should see how high my hands go when I worship. You should see how much I've given. And the reality is, it is all of God's grace. How quickly did Jonah forget that he was a recipient of grace and he was trying to block that from people who really needed it? So Jesus tells this parable, and did you notice it just ended abruptly? He just says, we had to celebrate and be glad because his brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he's found. Just ends it. Now, I just want to ask a question. How should this older brother have reacted? Being the elder brother, he should have been a leader. The elder brother is supposed to lead. So when his brother, way back in the beginning of the story, when he was being disrespectful to his father, he should have stepped in and said, no, we don't talk to dad like that. That is not the way we talk to our father. If you are a child, you know you do not like people disrespecting your parents. Amen. You will fight somebody for that. I remember one time, it was a long time ago, we were doing a church picnic, and I was probably, 12 maybe, and Reggie accidentally ran into my mom and busted her lip up, or tooth or something. And I didn't see it. I just see her with the thing on her mouth and she crying. And I said, who did that? And someone said it was Reggie. And I'm not even a teenager at this point. I'm ready to fight a grown man. I said, and they had to help me back. I said, Reggie, you hit my mama? 12 years old. Complete accident. But I'm ready to fight. I said, Ray, we ripping up your covenant membership. You don't come to our church anymore. Because you don't disrespect my parents. And this older son, he allows the younger son to totally disrespect, embarrass his father in front of everyone, and does nothing. He should not let that happen. And secondly, he should have gone after his brother. When he saw that his brother was gone, he should have gone after him. That's what an older brother does. He doesn't allow the younger brother to act like a fool. He goes after him and says, no, this is how we act. I'm an older brother and I know this. My brother and his wife were having one of those, I don't know if you've been married, you have one of those fights. One of those fights where you leave the house and you contemplate, am I going to come back? One of those. And if you're married, you have one of those where you're just out there and you're like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go to a parking lot and just walk on the stripes for a couple hours because I ain't got nothing else to do. So it was one of those fights. So he was gone and he had turned off his phone. So we're calling and texting and trying to get a hold of him and couldn't get a hold of him. So after a while, I just started to get a little concerned. So eventually, long story short, he comes in. And so he's in the room talking to his wife, and I just stick my head in the door and I say, hey, when those kind of things happen, you keep your phone on and you let one of us know. You let me know. You can't do that. You don't got to tell her where you are. We'll tell her you good. You ain't got to talk to her, but you can't do that. You can't do that. Could you imagine what it would be if he was gone, we couldn't get a hold of him, and I'm just sitting in the room playing video games? Knowing he's lost, knowing he's out there, maybe hurt, and I'm not chasing after him? And this older brother, his lack of leadership, his lack of love, I think it makes us long for a better older brother. And one came because Jesus is the true elder brother. He is our elder brother. I'll never forget, they asked my dad to pray for something where it was interfaith. And so they said, sir, could you please not use Jesus' name when you pray? And so I don't remember what he prayed, but I remember at the end of the prayer, he said, in the name of our elder brother. And I said, who? I don't think we worship him. But the Bible calls Jesus our elder brother. He's the firstborn of many brothers. In Hebrews, it talks about that he's one of our brothers. So Jesus is our elder brother, and he's a true elder brother. And he's the one who came from heaven, put on flesh, and came into the far country after us, brought us back home, and then he made us co-heirs with him. Remember, if you were to bring the son back, remember, he's already squandered more than a third of it. So when you bring him back, there's less to be divided. And he makes him a co-heir with him. And that's what Jesus has done for us. In coming and living the perfect life and dying, he has come after us. He is the true and better elder brother. So how does this story end? It ends with the father pleading with his son to come back into the house. And we've said this, that God cares about lost people. Both lost people. There are two kinds of sinners. There's one who is openly and outwardly and manifestly wicked and immoral and irreligious and rebellious. And then there's the other who is inwardly immoral and rebellious, but outwardly conforms. On the surface, he's religious, and on the surface, He is moral. And Jesus comes for both. You might say, well, Jesus was only after the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the sinners. No, because if you look back in chapter 14, right before this, it says that it's on the Sabbath, Jesus went to eat at the house of a prominent Pharisee. Jesus, throughout his own ministry, is calling both to the younger brothers and the older brothers because they're lost, saying, come and be reconciled to me. So how's the story end? Jesus doesn't finish the story. So I'm going to finish it. 2 different endings. I'll give you the first one. The father comes out to him and he says, your brother was dead and he's alive again. He is lost and he's found. Please come. And the older brother says, Father, I have also sinned. I don't deserve your love. I've been doing what I'm doing just so I can get what you have. And look at what my brother has done. He's repented. He's come back. And I'm just like him. And he put his arms around his father, and they walk into the house. And he embraces his younger brother, and they sit down at the table, and they have a big steak dinner, and they celebrate. That's one. Second scenario is the father comes out and pleads with his son to please come in. And after his father is done speaking, the older brother finds a piece of wood, picks it up, and beats his father to death. And that's what happened. Because the very one who was pleading with them to come in and celebrate, they killed him. With wood, nailing him to a cross. But that was the plan all along, wasn't it? The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Let's bow our heads.